What's up, everybody? It is episode, I always get this wrong, episode 7. It is episode 7. I've got a good buddy of mine here. We have worked together through the years for many, many years now. It doesn't feel like it, but we've definitely worked together for many, many years now. And he is one of the owners of Duncan Group Properties. I'll let him introduce himself, but somebody that I definitely respect and has been on a journey of his own, and definitely want to share his journey and everything that's been going on from a health perspective, because I've definitely seen the health transpire into business success for them. So Ford, introduce yourself. What do you do? And we'll kind of jump into it from there.
I just do.
Yeah.
That's the real truth of it. I just do. I do a lot. But one of the main hats I wear is I'm the operations manager, one of the owners at Duncan Group Properties. And we started that back in 2019. But I started in real estate as a single agent back in 2016. So, coming up on a decade in the business in this local market. And I started out, I left. My story is probably very similar to most people's story. Just started out in real estate. I actually left a paycheck, left a job with insurance, retirement, all that sort of good stuff, and jumped into real estate at absolutely terrible timing. My wife and I had just bought our move up home. So we had just increased our mortgage payment.
Oh, wow.
And got into real estate, and quickly found myself realizing it wasn't as easy as everybody thinks it is.
Yeah.
But through the years, I just, like I said, I did. I was one of the first ones in the office early in the morning, stayed late.
Yeah.
Worked with my mom. She taught me a lot. We started a team about a year or so after I got into real estate, which kind of led me into actually business building, which was what I found to be my actual passion. I actually say it a lot. I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't like selling real estate.
It's a grind.
It is. That it's not necessarily my passion.
Yeah.
I do enjoy helping people buy and sell homes. I do enjoy the impact I'm able to make on people's lives. I'm currently working with a client right now that this is probably our 18th deal together. And so, those relationships and things like that, obviously I enjoy those, but the grind of selling real estate, I don't enjoy that. But I found my passion early in the team journey of actually being a business builder, being a leader, a manager. And so that kind of leads me to where I am today. We have a firm of roughly 25 agents. We are licensed and serve South Carolina and North Carolina, all the way out to the PD of South Carolina, and then coastal areas of South Carolina and North Carolina. And over the last, I guess that's about 9 years now, it has just been a gradual progression of doing and building and becoming the person necessary to create that impact, which I found my true passion. The biggest passion was just creating impact in the lives of those agents that work for us, as well as the clients.
Yeah. So what in the journey of kind of starting the team and going through that, like what was that moment where you're like, oh, I enjoy the leading of the team, and I really want to make an impact here? Because for me, I'm the same way. Like I do like mortgages, but not in the sense of like I want to do a mortgage every day. I like mortgages for the simple fact that like I've got 11 loan officers that I'm able to help their family and help them and help.
It's the strategy.
Yeah,
it's the being able to innovate and create better systems and processes that make the process of selling real estate better.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's what's really scratching my itch right now too, is like outside of the income that I get from closing a loan, what's really fun for me right now is seeing the light bulb go off for a loan officer that is maybe new to the business and just made the first 10 grand in a month that they've ever made. Like that's really fun for me. And I would assume that like starting a team it was for that reason. Like that's a fun moment.
Yeah, I think it was kind of the light bulb moment for me was, as Mom and I were, a team, working together, I realized how much better and more enjoyable it was doing it with more than, one person.
Yeah.
I realized that solving problems became so much simpler when more than one brain was involved doing it.
Yeah.
And then, then I realized that solving problems is a matter of, in a lot of cases, just getting rid of excuses.
Yeah.
And when you build a team, you're building systems and processes. And in order to build systems and processes, you have to stop making excuses and say, why is this actually happening?
Yeah.
So it at really high level, it was just like this light bulb moment where the magic pill was simply scaling and growing
Yeah.
and creating systems and processes that solved the problems.
Yeah.
And
a lot of those systems are to solve or to remove the ability for excuses.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
a lot of
accountability systems, especially. And so that because I got the bug, I had that passion. That was interesting to me. It didn't so much make sense just to keep that to myself.
Yeah.
It really made more sense to build something where more people could benefit from it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that led. It was unlike any business you're building. It was a rocky road.
Yeah. It's not a fun fun thing.
I probably pissed some people off along the way and made some mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
But through all of it, it was really just a process of first and foremost self-discovery.
Yeah.
And then never saying, well, I've solved the problem, I don't need to think about this anymore.
Yeah.
Because the solution needs bug fixes and patches and stuff like that throughout the years that go on. So
yeah, it's definitely one of those things where, like, whenever you're growing in that sense, like, I mean, we also were growing like early on in our adult life too.
Right.
Like we started teams and started businesses early into our adult lives. So it's like, oh shoot, I'm growing up through this process at the same time. It's not like I started this company at 35, 40 years old and I had time to mature. Like, I started mine at 21, and it was like, oh shoot, I'm not like equipped to like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a good leader, but like, I also have my vices at that time, like growing up and going through some of the stuff that I've gone through. It's like, you're having to lead other people while also fixing your stuff. And it takes a hard look in the mirror, and like ego hits every once in a while where you're like, oh, I need to chill out a little bit and like listen to what's going on and make sure that I'm hearing the people around me. And that was always for me, like, as I've grown as a leader, was removing the ego. Like, I had a big ego whenever I first started this mortgage thing. And then just kind of getting out of the way was my biggest growth moment.
Interestingly enough, along those lines of, getting rid of the ego, that's really what led to the fitness journey that you mentioned. And I call it really a health and fitness journey, because I do love being fit. Who doesn't like looking in the mirror and saying, hey, that's a better looking version of myself than I saw, a few months ago or a few years ago. But overall health markers and labs and stuff like that also were really the main focus. But ego was first with that. I actually emailed a very well-respected local business person recently who has shared a lot of impactful stuff with me. And basically said that, we started DGP and it was a struggle. Honestly, I think made a lot of not necessarily mistakes, but missteps. We learned, built the plane in the air.
Flapping your arms
yeah,
like they were wings.
Yeah, yes. So, it was, Michelle nor I were business operators. Like Michelle's history was as an educator.
Yeah.
She was very good as a solo agent, top producer in the firm. I had a criminal justice degree, and I was 23 years old when I got into real estate.
Yeah.
So, I was looking at DGP one day, and I'm like, man, we've got a few solid agents, but we're not growing.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, we might have had 6 or 8 agents, and there was another firm that was started up around that time, a few years after we started, and they just exploded.
Yeah.
And this particular individual was one of the leaders of that, and I emailed him recently and told him, I said, I was jealous. I looked at what you guys were building, and I was just like, how can they do that? I mean,
yeah,
I'm big and bad, and our company's awesome, and why are they growing so fast, and we're not? And it was around that time where I also looked in the mirror, and I was like, I'm freaking fat. Like, this is probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years into real estate for me.
Yeah.
We had our first child by that point.
A little dad bod action.
It was full on dad bod action. And I wasn't happy with myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna shame anybody for where they're at in their health and fitness journey, but I'm gonna speak personally of myself. I didn't look at myself and say that's a reflection of excellence.
Right.
Like that's a reflection of a solid operator.
Yeah.
I looked in the mirror and I said that is a reflection of a sickly, weak, unhealthy individual.
Yeah. It takes a lot to get to that place mentally of being able to tell yourself that too.
And around that time, I went to the doctor. I wasn't consistent with going to the doctor, doing my annual checkups or anything like that, getting labs done. So I went and I was really honest with my doctor, told him, all the symptoms I was having, and had some labs checked, had a sleep study done, had a ultrasound done, had all sorts of stuff done. Come to find out, I had 6 different chronic health conditions. So then there's that kind of mindset. I'm in the gym at this time. I was fairly consistently going to the gym at that time, 3 or so days a week.
Yeah.
And then I get back to back diagnoses. Here's your 6 chronic health conditions. And I could easily have said, oh, well, this is why I'm fat. Like I'm a victim.
Yeah.
Like I have these chronic health conditions. It's not my fault.
Yeah. I need to medicate.
Yeah. I just need to medicate. And, if I am overweight, I have an excuse. And I really could have given up on my health and fitness journey then. But again, a concept actually that I'm big on today that I heard about during that time, because, I talk with my agents a lot about real estate is a multifaceted thing. Like there's so many things going on. You've got to be good at all of them at one time to be successful. Well, so is a life transformation, a health transformation. So during that time, I was also doing a lot of personal growth and development podcasts and books and stuff like that. And Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That concept I carried into my life at that point. And so Extreme Ownership was like, I'm going to take ownership of the fact that I need to change my life. These chronic health conditions are irrelevant.
Yeah.
We're still going to stick with the plan. So, through that process, I increased my days in the gym. I'm not going to let these chronic health conditions define me. I'm going to get in the gym more. So now I'm at 5 to 6 days a week most weeks.
Yeah.
I'm in the gym. Started eating better. I hate diet. I hate the word diet.
Yeah.
Diet culture is absolutely horrible.
It's just not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. Nutrition is the word. Nutrition plan. So my health, my fitness, and my nutrition plan, excuse me, was implemented. So what does that look like for me now? And then we'll kind of talk about the journey. But I already said 5 to 6 days a week in the gym. I get labs drawn every 6 months. I visit with my doctor every 6 months. My nutrition plan varies based on what my goals are in that time. I finally allowed myself to be in a calorie surplus. I went 18 months with no calorie surplus. I was in a calorie deficit. I was losing fat. I lost about 26 pounds of fat, built about 14 pounds of muscle. And so I lost a significant amount of weight. And what does all that have to do with my business?
Yeah.
Well, I found out how to be consistent.
Exactly. Yeah.
I found out what consistency can do.
Yeah.
And what is a better way of seeing what consistency can do than looking in the mirror?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it can be hard in business to see what consistency can do because it can take months and months of time, and you feel like you're, especially for real estate agents, and I'm sure loan officers as well, you feel like you're working for free, like you're not getting a paycheck. You're doing all this work and you're not getting paid, and so it can be very, very difficult to continue to stay consistent. Which honestly, in the fitness realm, same thing, because like I really didn't start seeing a ton of progress in the mirror for 6 to 9 months. But at least I did see some movement on the scale. And because I was going and getting my labs done every 6 months, at least by month 6, my health markers were improving. Yeah. So my doctor's, saying you are doing a good job. You are making progress. So, all of a sudden I'm realizing if I can be consistent in my health, fitness, and nutrition planning, and I'm seeing improvement there, what if I apply consistency to my business?
Yeah, imagine that, right?
Imagine that. Every coach, every business leader, every podcast is going to preach at you. You need to be consistent. Yeah. I ignored it for years. And then I said, okay, clearly it worked for my health and fitness. Let's try it with my business. And so I started becoming more consistent, more regimented with my time management, with my activities, and not just my own personal sales activities, but also with the agents, being a bit more consistent with the agents that I'm leading on what are the standards. And standards, we think of accountability. Sometimes it's easy to say, well, that sounds like a bad thing. That sounds like you're being a micromanager. No, I'm simply, for the agents that subscribe to it, say, here's the standards for lead conversion. Yeah. Here's what's going to convert leads, and this is what I'm going to hold you to. I wrote it down. Imagine that. Writing it down, writing down your expectations actually works. Again, like I said, I made some missteps along the way of building the plane in the air. For years.
And it is hard after you do that. Like once you start injecting consistency and accountability into something, if you have a bunch of people that saw you before that, that are still with you, it's very hard to go, all right, well, guess what? We're going to be accountable to this now. And they're wait, what?
Yeah, I have the best agents to work with. Yeah. I mean, our agents are phenomenal. Even the ones that resist change the most, they are so patient. Yeah. Because that is the truth of it. First, my point was you got to write down your expectations. Yeah. For years, we didn't have them. I thought that my training on it was enough. I didn't have a written plan.
The talking about it was enough.
Talking about it was enough. No,
same. I was in the same boat.
We actually finally put it down in writing. And through the last 9 months, the biggest growth we've had at DGP has really been the last 9 to 12 months. And it's because we've really been focusing on the systems and processes. And imagine that my improved health and the improvement in my business were happening at the same time because
Yeah.
of consistency.
Yeah.
And just got to keep saying that word over and over again. But through that, there were a lot of changes.
Yeah.
And so change is often resisted. It can be a scary thing. But what they've noticed, I believe they back me up on this, is there's been incredible improvement to their quality of work.
Right.
When they show up to the office or when they're working from home, wherever they're working from, and they're prospecting, they're working through our lead systems, it's better, it's easier, it's less clunky. Some of the pain points have been moved away.
Yeah.
And so, this is all the massive excitement that I have right now. Is I have been able to see my personal growth and my business growth happen together. Meanwhile, I have adorable children that I get to see
Yeah.
basically every night. I have a wife who is amazing, and she definitely supports me and provides a ton of assistance throughout all this. But even she's in the gym. She saw me going to the gym. She's like,
Yeah.
I want to do that too. So, we make sure that we give each other the time to do that. So, I mean, I've got all these good things in even like my home life, and it truly comes from this journey through the last 9 years of building a basic business,
Yeah.
which anybody can do. And I think that anybody who's going to listen to this podcast, you're not happy with just a basic business.
Right.
You are looking to take a basic business and level it up to the next
Yeah.
level, and not even just level up to the next level, create a positive growth trajectory.
Yeah.
And
A legacy type Yeah.
business. And if you want to do that, you have to stop, one, either ignoring consistency, saying that it doesn't work,
Yeah.
or two, lying to yourself and saying you are consistent
Yeah.
when you're not.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
real, true consistency is life-changing. It is
Yeah.
business-changing. It's massive.
Yeah.
Saying you're consistent because you occasionally, for a few weeks or months, can do something and then you fall off
Yeah.
again, that's not consistency.
Yeah, and it really leads to like these waves of business, and I see it in the mortgage business all the time, where it's like, oh, there's that person on social media, and then all of a sudden you don't see them for like 3 months, and it's like, well, they made a bunch of good money being consistent on like outreach and social media or whatever. Then they went dark because they had all this business that they probably don't have the system to make sure that it actually closes on time. And then once they run out of that money because they stack their coffers, then they're back and being consistent again.
And the two times that I see that most commonly, it's going to be in the new year.
Yep.
New year, new me, new energy. And you can see it for a few weeks and then it drops off.
Yeah.
Or when they change firms.
Yeah.
If they, for real estate, go to another brokerage.
Yeah, another mortgage company.
Mortgage company. All of a sudden there's this new motivation. And as soon as that motivation wanes, it's back to minimal activity. And, that's kind of the real key here, is consistently doing average
incremental.
Is going to lead to a consistently average business.
Yeah.
Consistently elevating your activity and doing high level work consistently will lead to a positive, huge growth potential. And people do not like to hear that.
Yeah.
They do not like to hear they actually have to do massive work.
Yeah. They're like, oh, how do I get passive income and not have to work? Like that's the trend of our generation right now. It's like, well, maybe you could buy like 5 or 6 Airbnbs and make quote unquote passive income, and that's what you're chasing. But like, if you had 6 or 7 Airbnbs, like you're still doing a bunch of work. Like it's not passive income. There's no such thing in my opinion. Like maybe you build something and ultimately sell it, and now you just have cash, and that cash starts earning money. That's one thing. But like majority of the time, like you're going to have to invest a ton of time into something for it to be successful. And I think where we align is like, I'm constantly always trying to make something better. I'm like, like that. Okay. Like that's great that it's working well, but like, how do I make it better? How do I make it like, and not changing the system to make it better all the time. Cause you can't be changing systems all the time. Like I don't want to misconstrue that, but incrementally making the system operate more efficiently. Like there's a base foundation to what you do and a base foundation to what I do. Like that's never going to change. It leads in, pre-approved, conditional approval, CTC, whatever. Like that's never going to change.
Right.
You need to evaluate the income, all that. But how you do it and how you're able to take that baseline foundation and then continue to tweak it and make it a little better, make it a little better, make it a little better, I think is where a lot of people, they can't stay consistent enough to even make any changes. They're just like, all right, I did all of this and it went really well. And then now what do I do? And they just can't stay consistent long enough to get out of their own way. And it really leads to, I think that's what leads to burnout. Everybody's always asking me all the time where they're like, dude, like, how do you do all this stuff? How do you podcast? How are you building a CRM? Like, how are you doing all of this? And I said, well, like I'm consistently scratching the itch that I know lives inside of me, which is a creator, a creator type of person that wants to make sure that I'm making something all the time. But I have a way that I do it. Like we get done with the podcast, I stop recording. I know that I need to take that hard drive and boom, boom, boom. I have it done in like 30 minutes, So
do you know how you avoid burnout really and truly? You become a stronger person.
Yeah. Yeah. You get obsessed with.
Stop being weak. That's
the reality.
The reality of it is because I was there. If you drink, you already finished your bottle of water. I'm working on it. Yeah. But I know people that don't drink that much water in an entire afternoon.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You are dehydrated. You're staying up until 1 o'clock in the morning on TikTok. Your breakfast is consistent of like a couple of Oreo cookies and Red Bull. And then you don't understand how someone who is hydrated, fit, and has good nutrition has the energy to do all what they do. Your body is dying and decaying.
Yeah.
So your first way to avoid burnout is to actually have the energy and strength to do massive things.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we all have our limits, and it doesn't hurt to be really good at leveraging systems and people and having good time management and having some level of grace with yourself. But the problem is you have to wait to give yourself grace until you're actually moving and have moved into a new arena.
Yeah.
If you're still in the arena where you're weak, you're unhealthy, you're dehydrated, you're operating off of little to no sleep, you're spending, 8 hours a day on social media.
Yeah.
No grace.
Yeah.
No grace on yourself. You got to kick yourself in the butt.
Yeah. Change
your life. Get yourself personally in a position where you can do massive things.
Yeah.
That's where it stops. That's where it ends. Is you have to be the person capable of doing those things that you're inspired by or that you're impressed by.
Yeah. And the same, like, honestly, I was in the same boat. Like for me, it was, a Jekyll and Hyde thing for me for a lot of my life, up until maybe about 3 years ago. So it was a Jekyll and Hyde. It was, I'm this person just grinding and showing that I'm doing all of these things. But behind closed doors, I was cynical and doing things outside of my character and not being the person that really people needed in order to be led by. And once I was like, had that hard moment in the mirror with myself, because I was also not being consistent. So when you're Jekyll and hiding yourself and you're two different people, it's very hard to be consistent because you don't know what you you don't know what you've done. Like you're like, all right, well, what did I say over there? Cause I don't remember, and like, so it's very hard to really operate within yourself. And that's the moment that I got to, I just was really hard on myself. Like I looked in the mirror and was like, dude, get your shit together, man. Like you are not the person that you think that you are. And I had that moment with myself where I'm like, and I said this whenever I spoke the other day at this event, the thing that changed my life was the moment where I finally got to a place where it was like, you're not as important as you think you are. Swallow your ego, get out of the way, and be coachable. And once I made that shift because I had no coaching either up until that point. Like I wasn't getting regular coaching on the mortgage side. I wasn't getting regular coaching from a moral standpoint and all that kind of stuff. And I grew up hard. So it was one of those things where it was like, all right, like be coachable. You used to play sports, and the only time you got better at sports was when you allowed yourself to be coachable and worked hard at it. And so when I flipped that switch, that's when the business really took off. And then what allowed me to start drawing some real hard lines in the sand of what I am willing to take from people and what I'm willing to give to them. And that's ultimately what launched Legendary Mortgage. Was like, I finally got to a place where it was like, no, like, here's my hard lines in the sand from a cultural standpoint and from a standpoint of who we're going to be. And like, I wasn't aligning with where I was at in that sense at that point, because those hard lines in the sand weren't the same. And so I essentially culturally outgrew where I was at and had Legendary Mortgage, like the trademark, for a long time. And I was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to launch this thing in the highest rate market that's existed in at least my career. And yeah, there was bumps along the way. There's been bumps. But the best part about it is once I consistently was the person that everybody needed. And I tell Ben this a lot, and Ben isn't like, he doesn't go to church every Sunday, but he believes in something. And I told him, I was like, hey man, like, God prepared all of us for such a time as this, because we're growing quickly and we're adding branches in different places and all this different stuff. And I was like, God prepared me for such a time as this. And for 5 years of my career, I fought that. I was like, no, I'm going to have a good time, man. Like, and I'm going to grind, but like, I want my money and I want to spend my money a certain way. And then now it's like, all right, I'm listening and I'm stepping. I just step every day. I just walk. And
I think that kind of alludes to the next thing is you have to be the person that people need you to be right now, but your people are not staying stationary.
Right.
They shouldn't be. They should be growing too.
Right.
Which requires us to continue to be looking to become a better version of ourselves. And I think that's where the big shift happened for me, was realizing that there isn't a trajectory. Like there's not really a goal. There's not really a
once I do this,
then I'm good. It's just kind of this a relentless mission to just grow and become better. And that's something I'm working on within Duncan Group Properties, is our Excellence Collective that I started. And that's a group within Duncan Group Properties that is intended to be the energy bus that takes those who have a passion for relentless growth along that journey together, to be that energy bus that takes you on this journey of relentless growth. And that isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
But
no, there's some people that they want to do their one transaction a month or one transaction every 2 months, whatever it might be.
Clearly, according to the statistics, there's 74% of
they don't do any.
Cool, just not doing any.
I would think that like 50% of the 74% are probably half pregnant, like with another job.
Gotta be.
Gotta be, because I mean, you got to make money. But the other 30% of that or 20% of that's probably like just filing for bankruptcy and foreclosure, which sucks. But no, I mean, like the age old saying is change lives, change lives. And to your point about like, there's no precipice, there's no goal, there's no like, if I change my life to this point, then I'll be good and like I can change lives because of that. And it's like, if you're constantly growing and changing, all the lives around you will change. And I haven't said this in a while, but I used to have a saying of like, I want to be the asteroid, and because asteroids have their own gravity. So as they're flying through space, there's all these other objects that are like getting pulled to the asteroid, and sometimes they get bigger. And
I love that.
Yeah. And so like, I want to be the asteroid that's got this gravity that's just pulling other people along. And like, I'm not trying to impact a planet and kill a planet, but, I want to like people to be confident in me to the point to where they know if they hitch their wagon to me, that they will grow and they will make more money and they will do bigger things. And you can't do that if you're not operating in a way that you're growing every day.
And to that same point, authentically too.
Correct.
Because if you are operating and you are that asteroid and you do have that gravitational pull and you aren't doing it authentically, eventually you are going to break it.
You'll get exposed too.
Because you're going to attract the wrong people.
Yeah.
And that's my entire recruiting like philosophy. In fact, today we're using a job posting board system thing that posted job postings for hiring for agents across multiple different job boards. And I canceled that subscription today because my recruiting philosophy is simply, I just want to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I want to show people who I am. I have an email list that I send out to hundreds of agents. I post social media content usually at least 2 to 3 times a day. I am putting myself out there of like, hey, this is the guy, one of the people that are running this firm, and that's who they are. And I like that.
Yeah.
And if they like it, they'll come and work at DGP. We have that's the other thing is I've learned along the process. You can have the splits, you can have the leads, you can have the this, the that, you can have the fancy coffee bar, you can have it all.
Yeah.
But if they don't like you, they're not gonna work there, at least not for very long.
Or inversely, if I don't
like
you.
them, you're not gonna work there very long either. Exactly. But that's just really been my recruiting strategy is just being really authentic, really public, which is why I really appreciate you having me on today, because this is an opportunity as well for people to see me.
Yeah.
And know that, first and foremost, I'm more concerned with your like personal development and like who you are and who you're becoming and who you want, the life you want to live. Because that first and foremost is what needs to align. Yeah. And then if the systems, the processes, the value that DGP has to offer aligns with the business that you want to have, then it's the perfect fit. Yeah. If your life and your personal growth and where you want to be personally is not in alignment with the community, the culture that we've built at Duncan Group Properties, then you're probably not
just chasing production at that point.
You're not going to enjoy working there, and nobody's going to enjoy working with each other, which means that's a terrible place. Yeah. So being authentic about like who we are personally, so that we attract others who align with our vision and goals for our lives and our businesses together. That's the best type of recruiting.
That's what I mean. Like that to your point, like from an asteroid standpoint, like if you're not being authentically you, like number one, you'll get exposed, but number two, you could be leading people into oblivion. Yeah. Just into space.
Because you don't really know where
you don't know where you're going. So like being authentically you, and that's what I love about podcasting, because everybody's got haters. I've got my haters, And what I love about podcasting is if somebody wants to really know who I am, granted, I've not been consistent, but we're on episode 7 now. But if somebody wants to really know who I am, you can find me and you can figure out who I am pretty quickly. And I'm not changing for anybody. You know, like I'll make incremental changes to keep my wife happy and make sure that I'm growing as a human being. But if you just don't like me just to not like me, I don't, it doesn't matter to me. And
Yeah, I said something the other day. I was having a meeting with a few agents that are really close to me, and I was just telling them, and their opinions do mean something to me. And I basically just said that, you know, this is who I am. Some of my traits, they serve me very well, but I'm aware of my edges.
yeah,
They can sometimes be a little bit rough.
yeah,
And I'm aware of that. And when that does not serve people well, I am humble enough to work on smoothing those edges a bit.
yeah, 100%.
But you know, like you're saying, I'm not going to completely change who I am and become unauthentic just because you don't like me.
Yeah,
Because that's okay.
yeah,
Like, not everybody's going to like me. I cannot be all things to all people. I can just be the most I can be for the most people.
yeah. Yeah, and that was a big shift for me too. And I think we have the best team that we've ever had. Like, I know at this point. Like, I have the best operations guys that I've ever had. I have the best loan officers that I've ever had. And it really just comes from a place of just being me. Mm-hmm. And what it's done is made it to where, like, I finally, for the first time in my career, have a work environment that I do truly like. I loved mortgages, but through the journey of my branches and all this different stuff, like, there were so many times where I was like, dude, I don't want to go be around these people. Like, this is not fun anymore. Like, why am I doing this? And once I dove deep into just being like, well, this is who I am. Like, and I'm going to drive as much value as I can to you, as much as I possibly can. Because, you know, like, I'll literally jump into anybody's file. Like, it doesn't matter to me. And I'm here for them, and I fix a lot of problems, and I am authentically who I am. So if that's not okay with you, then you probably, like you said, you probably won't work here very long. You probably won't be part of what we're doing. And then you add the phrase that we're embarking on now of, like, legendary. It's like, dude, like, what you just did is not legendary.
Not everybody's
like,
going to live up to the legendary.
Yeah, and it's like,
vision.
We've had 3 different ops people through this journey to get to the 2 people that are working really well in our first year. Like, we went through 3 people to get to the 2 people that are actually working. And that's not a fun journey. That's not fun in your first year of launching a brand. Like, that's not fun at all. And, but, like, the reality is like, they weren't living up to the legendary standard. Yeah. And once you inject that into the business, like, oh shoot, like, this is holding us to a different degree. And in order for me to be able to hold them to a different degree of standard, like, I also have to operate in that same standard. And that was the disconnect for me early on in my career, is like, I would expect things from people and expect them to handle their business a certain way, but then not be doing that on my side. Like, I would be drinking, or I would be doing something stupid or whatever, and holding people to a standard that I wasn't living up to, which is the exact reason why I was just scratching the surface of success. You know, I made good money, but I wasn't making jumps to where, like, it was a sustainable business. It was just like, we do some loans,
it's not,
and
you know, it's not a pleasant experience for those that you're building with.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end of the day, that's what I think about all the time is my mission isn't for it to be the Ford Michelle show. Michelle agrees.
Right.
You know, our mission was to avoid the Ford Michelle show. That's why we didn't want to be a team anymore, and we started an actual brokerage. And the reality of the you know, what you're building and why you're building it is you want it just as much for the people that are building with you as you want it for you as the business owner.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if you're having recruiting issues where you're putting the wrong people in the wrong places, keeping them there too long, and you're not you know, holding people to standards, it harms those who truly belong.
Yeah.
You know, we have obviously lost agents over the years, you know, and in many of the cases, it was really for the best.
Yeah.
There's really only one agent that left DGP that went to go to another general brokerage firm that I really regret losing. I think it was a combination of I wasn't my best self at the time.
Yeah.
I think it was a combination of some emotions running high for them, with some things that were personally going on for them. And it just created a strained relationship. And that's one that I will probably always regret, because they're a good person.
Yeah.
And good people definitely fit well at DGP.
Yeah.
We've had lots that have left that just completely left real estate.
Yeah.
We've had a few that have left that have gone to work for a builder, and I miss some of them. They were great people, but it wasn't going to work out. But then you have those that left, you're like,
thank God.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate to be that way, but thank God.
It just because it was, and I mean, thank God for them too. Like, good for them, because at the end of the day, they weren't happy, and neither was
unequally yoked.
So it was like, a great way of putting it is like, good for them. Glad for them that they went and found something that works out better for them. But at the same time, the headache that I was experiencing, the brain power I was using to try and navigate this rocky road is over. And even some of the other agents who kind of could feel that could breathe a sigh of relief, because it was like equilibrium was restored to the community.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that a couple of times in my career. And the biggest thing for me is when I have people that are working for me or with me, and they don't work well together, and it's always competition, because we're all salespeople, but like they don't treat the ops people super well either. Like they just kind of beat on them, or like they don't align with anybody within the organization. To your point, like it just makes it feel weird. Like it's just, then you've got like this dark cloud that's just like every time that dark cloud comes around, it's like, oh God, I got to deal with this today, and it hinders. You might still be growing through that process like me as a business owner, you as a business owner, like we might be incrementally growing our volume at that same time, but we feel like our life sucks because you've got this misalignment of a person. And it's not usually a group of people. It's usually one person.
Yeah. I mean, I can say through my career experience that typically it's not a problem with like, I've got these 3 problems. Like there's usually one.
Uno mas.
And like even, I mean, and the other side of that is they don't always leave. Sometimes it actually can be rectified. I've got one agent in particular, love her to death. And one thing that I've been trying to do more, and it's along the lines of the ego, losing the ego and just being more humble, is while I can't relax the standards. I can't make exceptions for the standards. The standards are the standards.
Yeah.
And they are that way for everybody. But I can also understand that everyone is different, and I might have to show a little bit more appreciation, a little bit more attention. I might have to be a touch more patient.
Yeah.
If you're listening, you probably know who you are. I really do love you. But truly, like that's kind of my mindset is like sometimes there might be that conflict, and that it could be even unspoken conflict. You can just feel it. But sometimes, like that person still belongs here. What can I do?
Yeah.
Like, how can I swallow my pride, or how can I just be a little bit more intentional with this person?
Yeah.
And resolve that conflict, resolve that issue.
Yeah.
Because going back to extreme ownership, in many, many situations, if you take extreme ownership of that conflict and say, hey, what is my fault here? What can I do differently?
Yeah.
Then you can actually save a relationship. And just from a recruiting standpoint, recruiting is hard.
Yeah. It's not a fun gig.
It's not a fun gig. It's why most broker owners don't do it. It's why certain unnamed firms don't recruit. They just have these like little tiered levels where you get paid for recruiting for the broker because the broker doesn't want to have to recruit. It's hard. So knowing that, it's a whole lot easier to save a relationship and to save an agent than to have to go recruit another one. So that's always my mentality.
Yeah, there's a cost of acquisition, whether it be time, whether it be money, whether it be, so I totally agree. Like,
how can I preserve the value, the structure, the piece of what I've already got? That's always my first thought. As an owner operator, is my first thought is internal. How do I keep this together? Recruiting is a necessary part of business growth, but it's secondary to how do we keep what we have together? But then, yes, of course, like we were saying, there are going to be some that just have to go.
Yeah, and one of the recruiting pieces that, and you touched on it earlier, of like just putting our authentic self out there. What that does is that you end up having less instances where you get that one person that is just a cancer. Like it just, oh my God, like this has got to go. Yeah, because they're most likely never going to be in your stratosphere of the path that you're flying, because they're going to turn you off on their social media feed before that ever happens. And that's one thing that I think that I did wrong early on, was I was doing a lot of social media stuff, but I wasn't doing a lot of social media stuff to show who I actually was. It was like, here's what the business is doing, and here's my family here and there, or whatever. It wasn't like truly going out there and being like, this is what, if I was going to attract something because I'm being myself, this is the ideal loan officer that I want. And if you don't fit that, stay away from me. Like it's not a knock against you. It's just you're not going to jive well with the 11 that I already have on my team. And I'm protecting the 11 that I have on my team right now more than I care about getting 11 more. So if you feel like you like the vibe and the what we're building, you're going to not only have to convince me, but you're also going to have to convince them that you're part of the tribe. And that's really what has taken us to the next level. And now they like take that, they take that, and they're like, hey man, like they check each other, and they're like, you're not doing what you need to do.
You mentioned earlier in the discussion about chasing production. I
did that so much, man. Oh,
and every time I see that modeled of chasing production, I mean, it happened pretty recently, where you chase production and you get them into your mortgage company or your real estate company, and they're there for a little while.
90 days later, you're like,
there's no loyalty. There's no relationship. There's no personal connection. You have not built an organization. You've built a Shark Tank. And eventually they're going to go elsewhere, and then kind of got to start all. You got to constantly, churn and burn new people in.
And that's why, like, I posted the other day about this, and people always ask me, hey, are you still producing? Well, of course I'm still producing, because if I don't produce and I don't know that my system's actually working by actually being a part of it, then I don't know, like to what you're saying, like that's just going to turn into a churn and burn, because the system might not actually work. And if I'm not producing in the system to see that it actually works, then I'm recruiting people into something that, like, I'm not actively partaking in. I might be helping them get their loans clear to close and those kind of things. But if I'm not on the streets going like, hey, calling realtors and creating relationships and those kind of things, I don't have any ground to stand on with a loan officer I'm trying to mentor to get more business. Because I'm not doing it, and it's one of those things where, in my side of the business, on the mortgage side, I think the non-producing manager is dying. Like,
we have that same thing. And honestly, when I get the question, it's really a red flag for me. But the question of, are you a competing broker? And it's like, my answer to that is, well, if you're asking if I'm still selling real estate, yes. Am I stealing your business? No. First and foremost, we have a abundance mindset is like standard at Duncan Group Properties. We've got more leads than we can work. Truly, I'm not stealing any business from you, but also the majority of my business comes from my sphere and past clients.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
So are you asking me, am I going to give you my sphere and past clients? Yeah, probably not. I might actually. I have. Michelle has too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're too busy and we really can't take the business, and so we'd rather give it to maybe even somebody new. But do you really want a broker or a manager that hasn't touched an active file in a decade?
Yeah, it's not
like have they seen the new contract? Like have they seen this new thing that's come out? One complaint that I've heard in all the interviews that I conduct with potential agents is they have a lack of support. They don't get their questions answered. They get non-answers for their questions, or that's a good question, I don't know, and then never get back with the answer, because it is okay to not know things sometimes, as long as you get back with the answer. But is that what you want? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't have a non-competing broker or someone who's completely out of production and have someone that is integrally connected with what's happening in the real estate market.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what anybody says if they're not producing. If they say, "Oh yeah, I'm taking classes and training and I'm watching this and I'm watching that," but you're just not doing it.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about the average everyday transactional problems that loan officers and realtors are having, it's a no-brainer. You want somebody who's still actively producing.
And like there might be some organizations where like an owner is different than a manager. Like I do want to because like there are some people that might own a business that are not actively engaged in the business that do drive some value. But if you've got somebody that is the person that you need, like when you get onboarded and you have to call this person for support, and that person very rarely ever has an answer for you because they aren't doing the job. Like they're not actively doing the same job you are. It becomes so difficult, man. Like, and there are some non-producing managers in my business that do drive a lot of value because they're fantastic at guidelines and products and all that kind of stuff. But the majority have made it such a bad name for the ones that actually are very good. Like one person like J.R. Downs has been a mentor for a long time, and we used to work together. He's fantastic as a non-producing branch manager. Like he drives a lot of value to his team by fixing a lot of problems. But like there's also the other guys that are just like collecting a check that we had at one point at my previous company, and he had to go because he just got to a place where it's like, yeah, man, like I showing up in basketball shorts and not driving any value and all that kind of stuff. And
I do imagine that to some extent, some of the major differences that are going to come up between the loan side of things and the real estate side of things is there's a lot more staff typically on the mortgage side of things.
Yeah.
And so you can have people who aren't producing, but they are very good at a set amount of things. But, and if you have, we're not a huge brokerage. So, Michelle and I were the owners. She's the broker in charge. I'm also a broker. There is nobody else.
Yeah.
We're the accounting department. We're the marketing department. We do have a transaction coordinator, but your first line of support and mentorship, if they are not producing, and also I'm not a fan of agent mentors.
Yeah.
Agents are busy. They should be out producing. Like, I am a fan of shadowing producing agents,
but that doesn't need to become their person that like, they. I agree.
The management needs to be actively mentoring new agents. So if you have those that just aren't producing, their last experience with whatever the problem might be.
Maybe null and void at this point.
Yeah, maybe
it might be archaic.
The contract has changed. Something has changed. Or maybe, I mean, I've seen it happen. They weren't that good
Yeah.
when they were producing.
Yeah.
So,
or like they were a top producer, but never had a system behind it. I was talking about this the other day too. I'm like, the problem with the mortgage business in particular is it's run by a bunch of people that were top producers, in a lot of cases run by a bunch of people that were top producers that never wrote anything down. They were just like really good personal people that like could create some decent relationships with referral partners, but they didn't write anything down. They don't have a system to do.
it wasn't replicatable.
And then they own a mortgage company, and it's like, what the hell is going on here? Like, there's clearly no plan here. And it's definitely one of those things where it's like, what in the world? And that's what my team always asks me, like, how do you remember all these guidelines? And I'm like, well, the thing that you just asked me, there was a time where like it almost bit me in the butt. So I'm like, I will never forget it, or it royally bit me in the ass, and I'll never forget it. And if I'm not like engaging in transactions, I don't have the opportunity to make a big mistake that I never forget. So they don't, you know, and it's one of those things where it's just my belief. I mean, there's a right way and a wrong way all over the place. I don't feel like I have all the answers, but you ask any one of my loan officers if there's something going wrong with a file, if I'm going to fix it, and they'll be like, yeah, Mike fixes. Yeah, he knows how to fix everything.
And you're so right. I mean, there is no necessarily right way. There are definitely wrong ways. But in general, I love Michelle's analogy. And again, I don't know if I clarified that. She's co-owner of Duncan Group Properties and my mother. But she has this analogy of restaurants.
Yeah.
And brokerages are like restaurants. And you might not like every restaurant, but you like the restaurants that you like.
Yeah.
And so there's different right ways of doing things, but we're going to attract the people that align the best with what we're doing. And I think from, you know, a listener's standpoint, when you listen to a podcast like this, it's just like any conference I go to or anything that I listen to. May not agree with everything I've heard on there.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm just speaking from my experience and what I think is best, and maybe it's something that you've never heard, and you can take that and you can apply that in your business, and it be something that's useful. Because at the end of the day, I want to be authentically impactful.
Yeah, I like that.
This is who I am. This is what I do. Here's even some of the mistakes I've made.
Yeah.
Take it for what it's worth. Apply it to your business how you see fit. And then always feel free to email me or shoot me a message on social media and either say, you're an idiot, that did not work for me. Not going to offend me. And you say, okay, cool. Maybe even I can take something away from that.
Yeah.
Or especially email me or drop me a message on social media and say, hey, man, that actually really did impact me.
And that's been the cool part about the journey of the podcast so far is we've already gotten those messages. Like I've already gotten some messages on Facebook where it's like, hey man, that one episode, like something that you said like really just stuck, or something your guest said really stuck with me. And like, I'm doing this now. And like, I've made this amount of money in the last like 30, 60 days. And like, the podcast has just started in January again. And it's like, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. Like that's
been one of my favorite parts about being more active on social media too, is, and a lot of it is fitness too, because that's really a fairly new passion for me is the fitness side thing. I've done a lot of self-education on the topic, but getting those messages like, hey man, what gym do you go to?
Yeah.
What does your workout split look like? You know, how many calories are you eating right now? You said that you're bulking right now. You know, how many calories are you eating?
What does that look like?
What does that look like? And that's just really cool to me. And it's really new to me because I used to focus on the likes.
Yeah.
You know, how many people are liking my post? How many people are commenting on my post? Worrying about the image of that. And people judging me like, oh, people aren't even consuming his content. He's so stupid. Like, why is he posting that stuff?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I realized after I was consistently producing this content that was intended to be helpful and educational and impactful, it wasn't the likes and it wasn't the comments. It was some of the messages and text messages where that actually did strike something for somebody. That was something that was helpful for somebody.
Yeah.
The likes and the comments, I love to get them. But when I know I've actually been impactful is when somebody actually reaches out and asks further questions or wants to talk about what I posted more.
Yeah. Yeah. That to me is the best part about it. Like the DMs are when you know that you've actually like gotten through to somebody, and some of the DMs might be negative, which is fine. I'm cool with that too. But the reality is you got to be social on social media. I've been saying this to people forever now. It's like, well, what do you expect to happen if you don't ever reply to anybody, man? Like, I have somebody just at the last conference I was at. Well, how do I grow a presence on social media? I post like 5 times a day. I said, okay, let's pull it up right now. So we pull it up, look at it. And the dude doesn't respond to any of the comments or anything. Like, I'm like, well, dude, you're never going to get engagement if you don't respond to anybody. And you like, he was like, I'm like, what's in the name of social media? Social? I'm like, so if I walked up to you right now and I wanted to become friends with you and I just said, hi, I'm Mike, I do mortgages, and just like yelled at you, like, you'd be like, what the hell, man? Like, calm down. And that's essentially what a lot of people do on social media. It's just like, hey, I want to, like, and I'm like, whoa, dude, like, slow it down, slow your roll. You wouldn't try to pick up a girl that way.
Everybody's trying to go viral.
It's like,
that's the reality of the social media dilemma is everybody's just trying to be the next viral thing.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been trying to get back to on the social media side of things is I want to be posting content that's relevant, that's helpful, that's impactful, personal stuff too. That's another thing. I post a lot on my personal page. I don't post a lot of like directly business stuff because I find that it's just advertisement. It's junky. You know, most people aren't consuming it. There is a place for having a business page and posting business content and occasionally sharing that to your personal. But in general, if you're sharing something on social media, it needs to be relevant and it needs to be helpful and provide some sort of value. You need to do that consistently. You do need to be social. You do need to be engaging with people. But all of that also comes back to one of the key takeaways from this episode is losing the ego. Yeah. If you're trying to go viral, that's simply ego.
Yeah, that's all it is.
If you're posting with that purpose, that's an ego thing. So you remove the ego and look at how can I be impactful? How can I be helpful? All of a sudden, okay, now you're actually gaining some traction on social media.
You go from 5 likes to 130 comments because you're actually being social and you're engaging with people. And maybe you reach out by DM first in a lot of cases. You're like, hey, man, I saw that you engaged with my content. Thank you so much. Like, that's so awesome. Like, if there's anything I can ever do for you, let me know. Like, I just, whatever. Like, you got to be social on social media. And like, my personal following didn't grow until I did that. Like, until I responded to every comment and responded to every DM, and then like went and DM people that I respected and wanted to create a relationship with. Like, it just didn't grow. It was just like, to your point, I was just posting stuff hoping to get likes and to become viral in certain cases, and that's not really what it's about, and that's not how you make money from it. Right. Let's be honest.
Right. I mean, it can be fun. Like, I mean, I post some stuff on TikTok and Instagram that's, you know, not really intended to make me money. It's just fun. I make stuff on CapCut all the time because I watch the videos. Yeah. You know, and I've learned that I don't get my feelings hurt as much as I used to. Somebody jokingly, I mean, I know they were joking, but they said something about, you know, all the pictures that I take of the gym and stuff. It's because I like looking at them.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is like with memories, like it then becomes something accountable. Cause like next year, if you post all these pictures and next year you're fatter than you are in the pictures, like then you're going to be like, oh shoot.
I love putting my pictures beside each other.
Yeah.
I mean,
like,
but at the end of the day, it's really just about losing your ego, becoming more authentic. You know, the takeaways I've loved. This has been a fantastic experience. I have loved being on this episode. I'm taking away that I need to double down on finding any area where my ego is getting in the way.
Yeah.
I need to double down on consistency, and I need to double down on authenticity.
Yeah.
I mean, that just, if we're talking about what's the story, who am I, where's my business at, how's it grown? The reality of it is most of the systems and strategies and stuff that's out there, it's not proprietary to me. It's all out there. You can go pay for it. You can go buy it. But what has impacted me most is that losing the ego, finding consistency and authenticity in, the day-to-day of what I am, what I'm doing, and who I am.
Yeah. So to finish out, like, I'm so grateful you came on. I think it's been a great conversation. I think a lot of people will get things from it. And for me, I would say the same thing. For me, if I could invest anything into anybody that's listening, it would be, a lot of the times businesses don't grow unless you're growing. And maybe you have some crazy idea that sparks and it becomes wildfire. But the businesses that last for a long time are businesses that are growing because of the operator growing personally, not in the inverse. Like, if you're degrading yourself and you're getting heavier and you don't have as much energy and you're drinking more and all these different things, if that's the path that you're going on and you're frustrated that your business is not growing or your personal life is not growing, all you got to do is swallow the ego, look in the mirror, and there's the problem. Because nobody, I've said this multiple times on the podcast, there's very few victims that are victims of something that is random. Most of the time, if you're the victim of something, or you lose something financially, or you lose something personally, it's not because you're just an act of random crap in the universe. It's usually caused by a step that you made, a mistake that you made, and you're the problem, not anybody else. Don't blame anybody else. And I think that if you can get to that place, if you're a listener of this, and then flip, then you'll do just fine, and life will be A-okay.
It's that extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Just look in the mirror and stop saying, "Well, this happened to me."
Yeah.
And say, how can I impact myself? How can I turn this around? How can I build this?
Yeah.
This is.
And I'm a believer too. So there's a certain amount of, like, what I'll hear a lot of from a lot of people that are believers is, well, I'll just wait and, like, God'll provide. And I'm like, no, that's
not how that works.
That's not actually what the word is saying. The word is saying that he has equipped us to go and do things. But if you don't step and
I could go on such a long tangent on that.
If you don't step and go, then, like, he's not going to probably help very much, because like, you're not operating in what he's given you as a gift. And so that's the advice, is get out of your own way, and make sure that you're taking the steps to improve yourself. So Ford is one of those people that I know that if you reach out to him and ask for advice and ask for guidance, like, he definitely will reciprocate, and he'll talk to you and be a good ear and those kind of things. So reach out to him. His links will be included in the episode preview and all that kind of stuff. So thank you guys so much. This is the Legendary Project. And don't forget, please share this, because one of the things that we are working towards is getting enough publicity around the podcast, so then we can create some revenue to be able to launch the Live Legendary Foundation, which again is to fight for at-risk kids, trafficked kids, and those kind of things. So that's the vision behind the reason why I want some publicity for the podcast. So in 2026, we can launch the foundation and impact some children's lives. So thank you guys. Talk to you guys soon, and share the podcast.